Hi Roshni, can you hear me? Can you confirm that you can hear me, Roshni? Hi. Hi everyone. Hi, welcome. Welcome to another Friday afternoon session with the Grounded team on materials. Lovely. So you guys can hear me. Wonderful. So we've done two such sessions before. We did one on the first one we did was on stone, and then the second one that we did last week was on IPS, and today we're going to be talking about wood. These are all the materials that we generally use in our palette when we are doing our own projects, and so we did actually bunch of posts on Instagram on these materials, and we got a lot of interest. So we thought that, and we got a lot of questions actually. So we thought that it would be a good idea to start a series of Instagram lives where we kind of do a deep dive into these materials and go beyond just the aesthetic, but also talk about what it takes to actually work with these materials, use them in construction, and what are the pros and cons, plus what are the challenges that they present. So with that, I'm gonna stop. Stop sharing. Yeah. Okay. So hi, thank you again for joining in. As I said, we're going to be talking about wood today. We also asked you last time if there are other materials that you guys would like to discuss and talk about. We've received some answers. I think after the IPS session, a lot of people actually are keen to talk about lime plaster. And we have honestly never actually done it ourselves. So we're reaching out to friends in the architectural community to see if we can bring another expert on board to talk about lime plaster, because yes, that is of great interest. So if you guys have any other materials that you want to kind of, talk about more, where you want to learn more about the opportunities and challenges in construction, then yes, please write to us and we'll try to cover it if possible in our Instagram live sessions. These lives are obviously also saved in our IGTV section, so you guys can actually see it later as well. But yeah, just let's keep the dialogue going, where we're doing this mainly to share the knowledge that we have gained from our experience. So, as we would love to help as much as possible. I also feel that these are topics that are not really covered so much in in the school curriculum. So, these are things that you really do learn when you're actually practicing, hands-on. So if we can share our experience and it benefits the young architects and designers out there, then we would love to do that. All right, guys, so let's start. So we're talking about wood. Wood is very much in vogue. I think it always has been. It is a material that was traditionally always been used for construction. It is a very easy material to use because you can work with it very easily. I guess if you compare it, say, against stone, where stone requires a lot of strength to kind of make it into what you want it to be. Wood, in comparison, is actually a much easier, more pliable material, and it is obviously easily available. Historically, it has always been easily available in the forest, and therefore an obvious choice as a construction material. But also, if you see that historical sort of monuments or buildings that were built in wood do not exist anymore, because wood is something that can be easily destroyed by fire, can be attacked by termites and insects, is susceptible to rot, and it actually can decompose and biodegrade. So basically, it has a very long lifespan, but still a limited lifespan when compared to stone. I'm really talking about the historical perspective here. Today, wood, I think, is very much in style. I feel like we see it all the time. I think that, again, it was something that was made very, very popular by the, beautiful homes built by Bijoy Jain, and his lovely craftsmanship of wood has really inspired a lot of other young architects in India and in Asia to use the material more and more. It goes really well with the sort of natural earthy vibe that we like to have in our buildings. We've started, actually, we've reduced our use of wood in our particular homes, just because of the fact that we build in Goa, which is a place with very high rainfall, and wood has its limitations. Plus, when it comes to sustainability of wood, that is also something that can be questioned, and that's something that is debatable. And we will touch upon that, as we go forward in this session. So let me start with the questions. We again have received a whole bunch, and thank you for sending us your questions. Again, they're very good questions overall. So we've sort of made a list. We've combined them into a bunch of questions. So let me go through those, and hopefully we'll touch upon most of the topics that are of interest. So the very first question is, what are the different types of wood commonly used in construction, and what are they best suited for? Okay, so I would say, basically there is softwood and hardwood. Teak is sort of the king of, the type of wood that can be or should be used for construction and furniture and everything. And teak wood is a hardwood, but it, is just very, very easy to work with. So the way the grains of the wood is, and the way the wood itself is, it is a very easy material to, a very easy wood to work with. Then there are harder wood, species that are available. So for example, in Goa, we get a very, very hard wood called mati wood. In the north, you get shisham, you also get sal. All of these are hardwood. They can be used for construction, and they are used for construction, and they're pretty, they're pretty good types of wood to use in construction. The thing with mati, for example, is that it is so hard that when exposed to a lot of sun, it tends to crack. So, instead of, basically, it just tends to split and crack. So that is a negative of using mati, which in my mind is a beautiful wood because it's darker than teak actually, and has lovely grains. So, it's much more of that very dark chocolate brown with almost black grains in it. Now talking about just teak wood, comes from tropical countries. And again, the king amongst the teak wood is Burma teak, which is becoming more and more difficult to source. It's becoming very expensive, and you must remember that whenever we're talking about wood coming from countries that are developing or are war torn, with poor sort of administration, most of that time, that wood has led to deforestation. So that is something that we should sort of be cognizant of, regardless of, I know that nowadays there are certifications that are available which sort of claim that the wood is coming from plantations, from responsible plantations, but I would be very doubtful of that, especially for wood coming from areas such as Myanmar right now, which is going through a terrible sort of warlike situation. Then we also get a lot of teak wood from Africa, and it's very interesting because the different teaks from different countries have different colors and different grains, and they all have their own sort of aesthetic value. Again, I really like African teak wood because, again, it's darker than that golden color that we get from Burma teak and also Indian teak. So I like African teak, but again, I feel that in terms of it being a responsible or sustainable choice, I have doubts, because I I do believe that it will lead to deforestation, in African countries. The advantage of using African teak is that it's coming from Africa, so it's coming from ships all the way to India, and therefore a lot of that wood actually tends to dry along the way, like air dry. And I'll get to that part of those properties of wood in a moment. Then we have softwood, like pine, for example, is a very soft wood. They tend to be, softwood tends to be more prone to attacks by insects and termites and rot, and, has a shorter shelf life. So we prefer to use hardwood for construction and for furniture and interiors rather than softwood. Right, so I'm only talking about the woods in our context in India and in tropical countries. I'm not talking about the wood in America or sort of the Western countries. I think that's not on point right now. Okay, next point, how is wood sourced? Do you need a license to buy wood? You don't need a license to buy wood. You go to a sawmill and you can buy wood. How do the sawmills buy wood is where I think it would get more interesting, but I actually don't know. But obviously there'll be dealers who'll be selling it. A good way to kind of see, in my mind, a good way to kind of know whether the piece of wood that you're buying, like a trunk of wood that you're buying, is it sourced from a plantation or from a virgin forest. I think a good way to know is by looking at the girth of the tree. So if it's a very old tree and it's like, it's got a huge diameter, then obviously, in my mind, it's obvious that it's coming from a forest, right? Whereas plantation trees tend to be much more thinner in girth because they're obviously harvested at a certain point. Okay, how is wood prepared for construction? How long does the preparation process take? Okay, and the next question after that is, how do you account for the expansion of wood during monsoons, and is there a solution for this? So I'm going to take up both of these questions together, this is basically going to lead me into a long topic of moisture in wood. So why does wood expand and contract, right? So the reason is that when a tree is live, it has these capillaries in its trunk which transport the groundwater to the leaves of where the tree can actually make its food, right, for its own survival. So once you cut the tree, when we cut the tree to use it for any purpose, then we're basically hacking those capillaries. It's like, when we're getting a surgery and someone just cuts our skin, right? So it's like our blood vessels, where we're cutting into our blood vessels and we're interrupting the flow of moisture for the tree in this case. And but the capillaries inside the tree, after it's cut, they already have a certain amount of moisture, right? Now, as the tree dries, that moisture is released. And once that moisture is released, it tends to shrink. But if there is a lot of atmospheric humidity, then the tree will once again tend to absorb the moisture and hence it will expand. So that is the reason why the wood, even though you've cut it, you've made it into a door and a door frame, it's still in a way alive, right? Because it's a natural material. So it still tends to absorb moisture and release moisture and expand and contract. So that is the reason for the expansion contraction. So now we're going to go to the point about how do you prepare the wood for construction. So that this is where wood becomes a material that requires thought and care while using it. So when you bring any piece of wood or a log to your site for use, it has to be dried to a certain extent, so you reduce the expansion contraction once you have actually, put it into your building. You put it into certain use, once you make it into a certain object. So the point is that you have to dry it. There are these moisture meters that you can buy. So you can just go to a hardware shop or something, And you can buy these moisture meters where, you can actually it comes with like a needle sort of a thing, which you put inside the wood, and you can actually gauge the percentage of moisture in the wood. So there are various ways of drying the wood. The easiest one is air drying. So that would mean that you stack the wood on your site. You stack it on sort of shelves so that the wood has exposure to the air, so you allow it to dry for a few months. You can also, if you don't have the space, you can stack the wood above the ground, but then keep changing their surface that is exposed to the air, so that both sides can dry evenly, or your wood can dry evenly. So basically after a certain point, so once the wood is cut, obviously the moisture level is very high, right? But after a certain period of drying, the wood will achieve what's called an equilibrium moisture content, which in general for most woods is about 12 to 15%. So 12 to 15% moisture is a good moisture where the future expansion contraction is reduced greatly. So you can do air drying. You can just dry it on your site. You cut it into planks, and you basically leave it exposed to the air and leave it for drying. The other way is to actually kiln dry it, where you actually put it in these large kilns where they dry it mechanically, right? So in that also you can the kiln, the person running the kiln will actually be measuring the moisture, and he'll be turning the wood and all of those things to make sure the wood is evenly drying to a certain moisture content. You can also buy old wood, which is reclaimed, so maybe removed from old buildings and old homes. This old wood, and it is very interesting if you go to any of the old wood shops that are selling reclaimed wood, and you pick up a log, right, or a plank, it will be significantly lighter than another similar wood piece that you would pick up at a sawmill. And the reason is that the old wood is drier than the new wood, and therefore you can actually feel the difference in the weight. Then there is also, wood has other sort of concerns. One is when especially just talking about the preparation, right, of wood. So an important thing to remember is storing wood on the site. So wood is something that is susceptible to termites and to other insects, as well as to rot. So it's very important that when you're storing wood on site, it should not be touching the ground level. So it should not be touching the ground, and needs to be propped up so that it doesn't have direct contact with moisture from the ground. So that's another thing that you would remember when we're talking about preparing wood for construction. Excuse me. So and then there are chemical solutions that you can use on top of the wood to make them to kind of reduce its tendency to rot. Obviously, if you're doing any kind of chemical treatment, it is a temporary sort of a solution, because it can't make it rot proof forever. So that's where your design and detailing will come into place, where you should try to make sure, again, when you're installing the wood anywhere in your buildings, you try not to let the wood directly touch the ground. Ideally you basically prop it up if you can, so you reduce the exposure to the moisture from the ground. Okay. Then and also let's just talk about termites right here as well. And teak is supposed to be naturally resistant to termites. Most hardwood are actually better with their sort of susceptibility to get a termite attack than the softwood. But of course, we've all seen old houses with those little holes, everywhere because of termites. So one thing that helps in that case is if the wood is not touching the ground, right? Because the termites will come from the ground. So if the wood is not touching the ground, if you kind of, elevate it or remove it from the ground, from direct sort of contact, then that reduces your chances of termites being able to get to the wood. But of course, they can even, just come with breeze or something. But the good thing about termites is that you can always see them. You can always see their, the earth capillaries that they make. So, that would basically mean that you kind of keep a close eye on, your building while you're maintaining it, and make sure that none of those things kind of crop up in your building. Traditionally, there were many things that were used. Like in Goa, for example, they used to use the cashew oil, which is like a black color cashew oil, to coat wood, because most of the roofs were wood roofs. We've actually never done it ourselves. We've never used it ourselves, so I can't comment on it. But would love to know if any of you have actually experienced, have an experience using cashew oil, and can tell us about more about it, and whether it works or not. Okay, now let's go to the next question. Next question is, I hope that answers a lot of questions. I know these are the important things when we talk about wood, like expansion, contraction, termites, and rot. I think these are the three main concerns when we talk about using wood. So I hope I've been able to answer a bunch of doubts and questions, but happy to do more, and I know as much as I know. So if you guys know more, please share with us. We would love to sort of keep having those discussions. Okay, next question, guys, is what kind of wood is best suited for outdoor areas with exposure to harsh weather conditions? Okay, so again, here, mostly hardwood is great. Teakwood is pretty good. There are other wood types that come from Indonesia, which are also supposed to be good with water and can be used outdoor. I think there's something called wood, which I've never used. I've only heard about it. Marti, as I said, which is what I have experience with, if it is exposed to a lot of sunlight, it tends to split. Again, if you use wood outdoors, a good tip in terms of detailing is to elevate it from the ground. So even if you're trying to do wood decking, you must kind of have a framework below of like aluminum channels or something over which you actually put your wood pieces, so that the wood is not in direct contact with the ground. So that is something that's quite critical. There are also lovely alternatives available these days for use outdoors, which are basically wood lookalikes. So you get a lot of kind of this fake wood decking, which I think is great, because it and the quality and the aesthetic and the look of it is just improving day by day. So I think that those options are really great, because you have low maintenance. They're manufactured and engineered to kind of be easy to install. And they have, a pretty long kind of life. So, in terms of just having your clients be happy and not have to be bothered about maintaining wood all the time, I think that those kind of wood lookalikes are pretty good options. Other than that, we have also used, there's another material these days called WPC that's available, which is basically like a polymerized compound, like it's a board made with polymerized compound. So I think that is also another option. Of course, you won't get the wood grains, but that is something that, if you want to use, say, for example, if you want to do a front gate for a property and you want to get the slatted wood look, then we've used that, because that is pretty much zero maintenance when used outdoors. Okay, next question. Do you recommend wood flooring in humid climatic zones? Actually not, but it is very popular, and especially for the type of homes that we build, where these are high-end homes. Wood flooring is very popular. I have stayed away from it until now, because again, I feel very responsible for my clients and their them living with the homes that we build, and living in those, living with the good stuff and the bad stuff that we build for them, right? So I kind of tend not to experiment on at the cost of my clients, but yeah, nowadays there's a lots of different types of wood flooring available in the market. So I think that at some point all of us should look into it, because I think that there are several options available which can be used in humid climatic zones. Okay. Can rain-soaked doors and windows be brought to life and used again? So this is a lovely question, because, and I think that this is also a question that's going to be about sustainability, right? Like which is what we're going to talk about next, is how sustainable is wood. So, I will reiterate once again, I've said it in my previous Instagram lives, but, sustainability is about reducing, reusing, and recycling. So if we can get some beautiful old doors and windows that we can recycle in our homes, that just basically means that we're not using that much of virgin material, right? So you're just not cutting those many trees from, the very sort of few rainforests that are available, that are left on the earth anymore. So, and the beauty of wood is that you can keep reusing it over and over again. So what tends to happen is that wood is such a beautiful material, and it's such a malleable material and easy to use material, that even if there is damage, which, in this case, in the case of this question, is water damage, it usually is a very kind of surface level, damage, which basically can be, as long as you can just, I don't know what it's called in English, but, when you basically, randa marke, you take off the top layer of the wood. So basically shave off the top layer of the wood. Mostly you'll just find beautiful, excellent, new, as good as new wood underneath it. So what that means is that, if your mom, like my mom, has been storing old doors and door frames in some loft somewhere in our, in our sort of house in Delhi, then those can be reused. Like I can just bring them down one day whenever I decide to do something in the house, and, we can basically just shave off the top layer and get beautiful wood pieces which I can reuse for anything. Right, and old wood, of course, is better quality wood, because that teak wood was, really, materials were generally better in the olden days than now, right? But wood especially, that would be really good quality wood, which, and you'll just realize nothing has happened to it. So in fact, in my house here, we did some renovation work, and we took out some doors and door frames, and I took a door frame and I've made it into a full length mirror in my house. And all we had to do was scrape off the paint, because I live in an apartment which is about 100 years old, and there were several layers, coats of paint on that wood. So all we had to do was just remove the paint, and we got this lovely naturally distressed finish, and we made it, repurposed that into a mirror. So yes, so basically, whoever asked this question about rain-soaked doors and windows, most likely you can reuse them. You have to try to kind of shave off that, that layer, the top layer. And finally, the last question that I've kept for this session is wood a sustainable material? So we can talk about this forever, and I think that is true for most materials and techniques today, that there is a lot of back and forth about whether it's sustainable or not sustainable, right? So even, for example, something as simple as a plastic bag, there is a lot of discussion about whether it's sustainable or not sustainable, right? Like people are making disposable plates out of potato starch, and it's biodegradable, so yes, it is sustainable, but then are we spending too many resources making it, or whatever, so is it unsustainable? So I think that it's very difficult to say with a lot of authority that certain things are 100% sustainable and certain things are 100%. I'm sure you and I agree on a lot of things which are unsustainable, but when it comes to wood, right, so wood is actually having a moment right now where mass construction in timber is seen as a very sustainable building choice. And there are sort of these new buildings coming up around the world. One is coming up in Singapore at the campus, at the university campus here, which are high-rise buildings but done in timber. So, timber is generally considered a sustainable material, and because it is something that can renew itself, right? So wood can, even if you cut a tree, you can replant many more trees, and therefore it can renew itself, right? So in a way, it is a renewable resource, and therefore it is sustainable. But I feel that in today's world, with the pace of deforestation that we are seeing, I mean, I'm sure you guys have been reading about the amount of deforestation that's occurred in the Amazons, in Brazil in the last couple of years, right? Then again, countries like Myanmar are going through this political upheaval, and I'm sure that will lead to a lot of illegal logging and illegal, export of wood. Similarly, the situation is not better in other countries where, for example, Africa, Indonesia, where we get a lot of our wood from. So I believe that nowadays there are several alternatives to using wood. There are several engineered alternatives to wood, and I would say that we should possibly all try to give those a try rather than building things with virgin wood. So that is my opinion alone. But yeah, I mean, I would love to hear thoughts on that. I was going to say one more thing. Yeah, and then another great way of using wood is to use reclaimed wood, right? So in that case, you get your wood, you get your beautiful wood, you can do whatever you want with it, but then you're not cutting, hopefully you're not cutting any virgin forest for it. So if that is a resource that you can lay your hands on, then that's lovely. Like, for example, the Indian Railways had at some point, they was selling the old sleeper wood from the railroad tracks because they were replacing it with concrete sleepers. So that was used, that was bought and used, and continues to be in use today. And I think that is that can bring a beautiful aesthetic, and also again, you're not cutting virgin wood. So guys, sorry, I hope I've answered most of your questions, but we have a couple of more here, and then we're going to end this because I try to keep these sessions to about 30 minutes. So here are the questions that we've received on the chat. Is there any agroforestry happening around Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu? I'm sure there is. I'm not familiar with where. The second question is about finishes on wood. Third question is also on different finishes based on contemporary materials. So I guess you're talking about finishes for wood. We can talk about it in another session. I think I wanted to keep this more about, the real kind of in-depth knowledge on how to use wood. I think finishes, you can find a lot of information online. That's possibly also something that's very aesthetic that you can easily find. But I hope that the information that we have been able to touch upon today was something that's not that easily available. I hope that was helpful, insightful, and helps you in making your decisions when you're choosing materials for your future projects. So, okay, guys, I think that's the end of it. We're going to do another session next week on Friday, same time. We're going to be talking about landscape elements. Thank you so much for joining in. Also, we had done very much back in the day. I had done 3 blog posts with details on a lot of the stuff that I talked about today. So we're going to actually try to put them up as stories after this IGTV, with a swipe up link. So you guys can go to the blog post and read more about it. We will also save this IGTV so you guys can, drop us your questions and thoughts later. And I hope this is helpful. Thanks a lot for joining. Thanks. Bye.